Bixler.
Love is guitarist John Hart's sixth trio recording for SteepleChase Records. For this recording, producer Nils Winther wanted to mix things up for John and suggested keeping the trio format, but with a different instrumentation. This recording finds John playing with bassist Carlo DeRosa and cornetist Kirk Knufke. Carlo is a longtime collaborator, but the short rehearsal prior to the recording was the first time that Kirk and John had met, let alone played together. The result is a gratifying session of standards and originals, demonstrating the artistry of seasoned professionals. For the jazz student, Professor Hart offers a detailed analysis of giant steps toward the end of the podcast. John Hart, welcome to Liner Notes. Good to see you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you, and I'm happy to be on the program. We were just talking a little bit before, and you said you're in year 7 too, so thanks. I'm honored to be here. And of course, we've been collaborators for many years. So
Yeah, I know. All good, man. So it was cool to hear this new record that we are going to be speaking about today. Love is on SteepleChase, which is your 6th recording. Cool mix of standard tunes and some originals and some cool takes on the standards, which we can get into. I think the thing that's unique about this recording for me, like obviously, as you said, we've been playing. My quintet doesn't play a lot, but we get a medal for longevity there. And, we've been friends and collaborators for a lot of years, so I'm very familiar with your playing and, also with your trio. I heard at Mesro earlier this year that it's been going on forever. And I believe that that's kind of been your main format as leader and maybe on the SteepleChase label. But this is a trio, and I had just assumed when I saw, I read about it, I saw online that you had a new record out, and Carlo DeRosa, bassist, who we both played with, I knew, and but Kirk Knufke, who I didn't know, I assumed he was a drummer, and then I put on the record and he plays the cornet. In the liner notes, you tell me that this was the producer's idea, and mixing it up for sure. Like, why don't you talk about that process? You also told me, and it's also in the liner notes, this is the first time that you met him. Did you know him as a musician before the recording?
Yes, I did. Hey, Nils Winther, who's runs SteepleChase Records, is a big fan of Kirk's, and he's recorded him in many different projects. And I heard Kirk on some of those records, and I think he's on Matt Wilson's band recently. I've heard him on some of those. So Nils approached me. I was hoping to do another record, and I talked to him, and he sent me an email and said, how about a trio with Kirk Knufke and bass? I was like, really? And I've never recorded as a leader without drums. I've done some other records as a sideman without drums, but never as a leader. So that was very, very different for me. And he said he did some records years ago with Chet Baker and Nils Henning Orsted and Peterson and Doug Rainey, who's Jimmy Rainey's son, amazing guitar player, who's no longer with us either. And I'm like, wow, okay, and I checked that out, and I don't know if I can give you Chet Baker, but so I thought about it for a while, and then I'm like, and I was listening to Kirk's music a little bit, and we have very different styles, very different ways of approaching chord changes and stuff, and I thought, but I really liked his sound. I thought he had beautiful sound, and playing the cornet too, different. So I said, okay. Nils, I was talking with Nils, and I think it's very cool. He has this idea about just putting people together and putting musicians that maybe have not played or may not even be comfortable, and just to see what happens, which I thought that was pretty cool from a record producer's standpoint. So he wanted to do that. And then Carlo DeRosa, who I met probably in the 90s, we may have met him around when Carlo first came. We've been playing for many years. And then Carlo kind of reached out to me about the University of Miami where I teach, and he came down there recently to get a doctoral, his DMA, doctoral musical arts. And I think before he finished, he got a job. He's teaching jazz professor at the Western Michigan. So he's been there for a few years, and it was great having him in Miami, of course, and being able to play some. We sort of reconnected. And I started thinking about bass players. He was the first one coming to mind for this project. Even though, I have many people I played with in New York, and Carlo was in Michigan. I called him up. I said, Carlo, will you come from Michigan? Do this? You're the first person I'm calling for this. And he said, yes. That was great. I just thought the way his playing, which I knew very well, and also his whole vibe, I thought he'd be perfect. And so we met at Kirk's apartment for a short rehearsal the day before, and it was like, yeah. And I kind of wrote all the music and conceived the whole record around that sound, that trio and stuff. And we booked it pretty far in advance, maybe 6 months in advance. And first, because Kirk plays a lot of avant-garde music, I was thinking, should I write music more in that vein? And then Nils was like, you guys could do anything. You could even do a ballad record. Kirk could help play anything. So I just decided, you know what, let me do, this stuff, the way I might put music together normally, for a record, but just, with this instrumentation in mind. So we met together at his apartment. It was like, boy, it just hooked up immediately. So much we were rehearsing one tune, I just stopped it. I said, let's save that. It sounds great. All right, let's just save it. So I think Kirk is a very lit, he's just really listens beautifully, and I really like some of the dialogue that we have on the record. I think it's easy. I don't have to tell you. You meet musicians that listen and are open to everything. You're going to be able to play with them like you've been playing together for 30 years.
Yeah, definitely. And I think based on what you said about Kirk playing a lot of like avant-garde music, Carlo is probably a great choice for that. Well, not probably, he is, because he knows the tunes, he can swing, play the changes, but also he has a history of playing with Rudrich and BJ Iyer. He can
certainly, that was what I was thinking that very versatile and player that can swing too.
Right, definitely.
For me, he's a big.
Definitely, man. So did you one of the things that's really unique, as you alluded to before about this recording, is the cornet. You don't hear that too often. And it's did you like sound wise, did you have to conceive of anything or do anything different, as you comped or as you played with them? It's a familiar sound, but it's different enough that one notices.
Right. The cornet's got it's a little bit maybe it doesn't have quite the brilliance of the trumpet, right? You would say a little bit warmer, but not a flugelhorn either. So it's kind of somewhere in between. I don't really think I did it. Just it's so close to trumpet. I was thinking back some of the history with cornet, and I played in a Taramasa Hino's band for 2 years when I was in my late 20s. One of my first big gigs, when I was in New York, and Hino played the cornet. I keep forgetting that. Yeah, he pretty much played the cornet. He may have played trumpet earlier, but when I was playing with him, play the cornet. Cornet's got a little different intonation sometimes. Although Kirk really plays kind of very in the middle of the pitch. It's very easy to play with. Hino was a little on top of the pitch. I remember when he played with him. Could get that kind of sound. Similar as a saxophone that's a little bit on top of the pitch. Which is very very great. And then I played for years with Warren Vacher, who's also plays cornet. That's right, brilliant player, and we played a lot of gigs with him, and another very different stylistically from somebody like Kirk. So it had been familiar, but I honestly, it was playing with him was, the same, didn't feel that different from playing with a trumpet player. Now, of course, I'm going to play different with trumpet. I may comp differently behind trumpet than I would behind saxophone or a vocalist or anything. That's all part of, we, as musicians, we're putting frequencies and sounds out of the into the air, timbres, stuff.
Mhm.
If somebody has a different timbre, I'm going to try to change at least some parts of my timbre, or maybe the density of what I might play in those things. And I think there's some moments, I've been comping for a long time, and it's fun. There are moments like Kirk went high a couple times, and I'm up high on the guitar just playing like 2 notes or 3 notes. I love that kind of thing, which I've done with tenor saxophone players for years and stuff too. But that kind of thing, Rather, there's a chord there, but I don't have to play the chord. I'm going to find some notes that I want to play and register the notes and whatever, and make that whole thing happen, in that way.
Okay. Well, I would imagine, I want to ask you about, with the absence of the drums, did that change how you comped or how you thought about comping? And did you even think about it, or just, I guess as musicians, we just are entering into conversations and throw out what's appropriate.
Yeah. I probably didn't think about it. I didn't think about it. I've played in groups with some odd configurations through the years. And I think one thing about this is not necessarily that odd a configuration. It's almost like the type of, you get called to play a brunch gig or something, and you go, and that's what it is. It's a trumpet player leading it, and bass and drums, and you do the gig. But for a record, that's a different thing. Take that instrumentation for a record. But in terms of playing, probably not that much. I tell my students, you got to make it all happen on your own. Can't rely on the drummer to make you sound good. Otherwise the drummer's going to get bored to death playing with you. You make it all happen, and then you're going to elevate what a great drummer's doing. That's what it's about. So, and one thing I've talk about sometimes too is like playing in odd configurations. I used to play at the 55 bar some with the vocalist Tessa Suter, and she would hire somebody just on hand percussion and guitar and her. It would take me a couple tunes in the first set to kind of get used to the sound. But once I got used to the sound, by the end of the gig, or by the second set, suddenly I might be playing nothing. The whole opposite of what you would think. Oh, you got to fill it up with that spot. No, not necessarily. There might be a spot. It's like I can play nothing, and play super sparse, and that's what's happening. I got the sound of what the group sounds like and what the possibilities are. So again, even though it's not traditional for me recording in this format, it's not an odd grouping of musicians necessarily. But we don't have drums, so got to make that all happen. One thing I noticed listening back to playbacks and stuff is I can be kind of more upfront on this record than I am on other records without the fact that there's no drums. So the way the guitar sounds, and it's just super super upfront. Not quite a soul record, but there's a lot more guitar, and stuff. So it gave me the opportunity for that.
Like, looking into the future, do you can you imagine this same group plus a drummer or percussionist? And if so, like, how would that change what would happen musically in your estimation?
Yeah, I was even thinking about doing that before. I wasn't panicked, but I still was not nervous, but it's like, I wonder how the whole thing's gonna work out, and stuff. It was so different from me, and it wasn't my idea. I don't think it's been great working with Nils, because I had an idea what I want to do, and I tell him, and he's like, yeah, let's go for it. So this time he made the suggestion. I said, he's been letting me call the shots. Maybe I'll follow his lead. And at one point I was talking to him, and I said, yeah, this is really different. He said, I want to challenge you. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. Probably the thing that would change most is just thinking about the repertoire and the arrangements and what music I wanted to play. In terms of getting in and actually playing music, we just do that, like you would on any gig or something. But I think putting the music together be different. I think the repertoire would be different in some ways than what we did. This record, I have 2 or 3 ballads. I have a lot of stuff, and thinking about some of the guitar. I'd probably do the guitar cornet unison. I have that happening on some tunes and stuff. So that would probably be similar, you know. Some of the tunes on this record, you could put a drummer to it, it would just work perfectly.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking that the blues, I think it's the second cut, Infamy. You know, I think that would be really cool as a drummer also. I mean, it's cool how it is, but
Yeah. That one was really, I really thought about the guitar and the cornet. And I actually wrote it on Sibelius too. I've never done that. I use Sibelius, but I had the song kind of what I wanted to do conceived. You know, I just didn't sit down blank. So I had it in my head, but instead of picking up my guitar, I just went on Sibelius and kind of wrote it. And then when I played it, it's like, yeah, this is gonna work. Yeah, I mean, I tweaked some of it on the guitar, but I've never done that. It's funny. We're in that time now where it's like how much, you know, with the computer, you know, it's like how much music gets written on a computer. It's hard to tell. You know, you just start moving things around. There's another tune on the record, Love Is. I was using Sibelius some and trying to write some lines, and then the line was really cool, and I played it for a while, and it was hard to play. It's just, I was like, this just doesn't sound like me, you know. And then finally I ended up this way. There's some 16th note lines, and finally I ended up writing those lines on the guitar, you know, stuff. So I think that's a pretty good example of that, you know, and stuff, you know. You use the tool to help kind of tweak, and certainly it's great for playbacks and stuff. But Infamy, I knew before I sat at the computer that I wanted the guitar and the cornet in seconds, and I had the bass line, and I wanted this kind of vibe of this thing, this kind of sparse, a little bit angular thing, you know. And then the head does one thing, but then it just goes into a blues, you know. We go there from, you know, it's kind of constructed as a blues, a little bit the melody, but a little more loosely.
one of the things I thought very intriguing is your take on blue and green. Yeah, so that ends up in 5. Maybe talk about how that came about.
Right. I've ended up writing a lot of music, especially arrangements on riding my bike down here in Florida. So that one came on the bike. Was riding my bike and there was the bass line came and suddenly I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, let me put blue, or I can't remember if blue and green came first or the bass line, but it's like, wow, blue and green fits nicely over this and 5, and that was, and then I reharmonized it a little bit, I got some stuff and I added a extra bar, extra melody note at the end, and a few little things, and the idea was you just hear bass and then you hear this lone melody at the top, the first time through. And then second time through, suddenly, boom, the change is coming, and it gets more lush, and stuff. And that was fun. Yeah, that was fun. Fair amount of the tunes on this record were one take. That was one of the ones that was one take. So
I was going to ask you about that. It kind of had that vibe, just it was kind of almost like a session that you were fortunate to have recorded.
Yeah. Mostly first takes. Most of the Steeplechase stuff I've been doing is kind of like that. And I've been recording for a long time, but I really like to get the feedback from inside the booth. If we do one take and everybody's like, yeah, move on. I'm like, okay, cool. You guys like it. I'm probably okay with it. Yes.
Well, that also means you have to have somebody that you can trust back there, which obviously you do.
Yeah, you can have somebody you can trust. Either engineer, a great engineer, suddenly they're like the fifth Beatle or something. They come in, they're like they could be part of the band, if it's somebody you could trust,
Does he use the same engineer? Have you been working with the same guy for all 6?
Yeah, Chris Sewell at Trading Aids, who's great. I'm sure you've worked with him, right? Trading Aids, yeah. So it's very, very comfortable. That's all.
So is this band gigging at all, or is this kind of a one-off?
No, well, I mean, if there were some opportunities for gigs, I haven't thought about it. Maybe a one-off, I don't know, but if the opportunity, I actually looks like I'm going to go in and do a new trio record with Bill Wong and Tim Horner in February. So I just confirmed that. So that's next up, and we've been playing together for 30 years or something.
Right, that's a band I heard of, Mesrel, along with your son.
Right, we've done a number of trio records, but we haven't done a trio record for SteepleChase yet. We played my first record for SteepleChase was with that trio and Dick Oates. So it was the first record I did for SteepleChase, Crop Circles, which is going back 7 years maybe now.
So what's the material for the new trio record?
The material for the new trio record will be, I don't know,
TBD. All right.
But I wrote a tune, another blues, kind of a weird blues that's got a 14-bar head, but then we're just going to blow over 12 bars. I just wrote it over the weekend. I brought it into school, was playing with my students. I was like, this is for an imaginary trio session that hopefully is going to happen. So now the trio session is is on the books. So yeah, I'm going to start writing music. I think every record I've done for SteepleChase, I've pretty much written around the project. Yeah. So, and what I've done what I like to do, I love playing standards. So I'm going to play some standards, and I've done a lot of reharmonization of standards, which is part of it is I get to use these beautiful soaring melodies that were written, but add these elements to make it sound like my original music a little bit, in terms of reharmonization or writing arrangements of tunes and stuff. So that's fun. But I don't know. I may try to write close to a whole record of original music if I can. I'll have to see. So.
Before we got started here, you were talking about some upcoming gigs that you had with your son, and maybe talk a little bit about his thing and this package that you've been kind of putting together a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Well, Jake Hart's my youngest son, and he plays piano. He lives in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and he's been composing music that he plays on solo piano, which is sounds it can sound improvisational. He is taking from 21st century classical piano literature. The latest stuff he's been working on is going back further, and he's kind of mixing. He uses some quotes of well-known music with and then variations of his own around it. It's a very, very, very interesting, and he's been doing this for a little while. And he has a record out called Collage, which is one of his pieces. It's a 55-minute piece. It was released on Sunnyside Records, the jazz label. So it's very interesting. So that was his debut record. So he's been booking gigs. So we did I think we did an 8-concert tour in the beginning of the summer, and he plays solo piano, and then he's booking him on solo piano, and then me with the trios. And he'll join us. He plays jazz too. But he's got this idea of keeping it separate. So he has joined us on a few tunes here and there on the tour. And I think he wanted to be able to tour and play gigs as a solo pianist. He's just starting out. Nobody, in terms of having any following or anybody knowing him. So that started to look pretty difficult to do. So he had this idea about trying to book my trio and himself as a double bill. He's had some success so far, and that's why we did it Mesro when you heard us. And we have some gigs at the end of December at some different locations around the country, and then we have a bunch more gigs in the winter, including Birdland. We're going to play at Birdland upstairs in February, I think. So that should be
Oh, nice.
17th, I think. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Birdland upstairs, and Jake's going to do his thing. I think he's going to have some new music too. He's working and writing new music, and hopefully he'll be recording soon. And he'll play. And I got the trio with Bill and Tim for the Birdland gig, so it should be a lot of fun.
So like, when he joins the trio, like, what are you playing? Are you writing stuff for him in mind, like with his
I
tendencies?
just had him come up. We actually played. No, he came up and played. He loves the tune "Melancholy Baby," and he just came up and played it. We were playing in Nashville. I didn't think I kept asking her, "Are you going to join us?" And he kept saying no. And then I just went started playing the intro of the tune, and suddenly walked up and played. And he's burned still. So I'm not sure. He's a different character. So I kind of got I got to try not to just kind of let him find his way. I mean, you're a father of 4 children. It's like it's like, wait a minute, if you do it this way, it'd be better. It's like, no, but you're not them.
Yeah,
It's not your life.
yeah.
It's their life.
Well, that's cool that you can be on the road with them, and
I think I think it's really been an interesting experience. I mean, we actually really were on the road. It was crazy, and he's doing all the work. He's booking the entire thing. He booked us. We played at the Bop Stop in Cleveland, a great club. I loved it. You played there, I'm sure, right? At the Bop Stop. And he got a hotel and got the whole band or single rooms, and we checked it. I'm like, damn, Jake. It's like a real kid. And then we're off to the airport to go to the next city. And I get on the mic too, and I say, I've done a lot of different things in my career, but this is the first. This was the first.
that's great, man. I mean, you got to be
Touring
proud
with
as
my
a-
son. Yeah, very, very proud. Very proud. Very proud. And my son Sam Hart was really one of the up and coming alto sax players. He had some problems with his chops, and he stopped playing, but he's playing drums now. He's one of the first called drummers in Miami, and I'm trying to play with him as much as I can. He's swinging. He sounds great. He's played drums his whole life, self-taught, but now he's a professional drummer. I'm trying to get him to move to New York and be a drummer. And then my oldest son, Michael Hart, who's also a musician. He's the academic advisor for the jazz students at the New School. It's crazy, which is something he didn't train for, but he said their job opened up and he got it. So he's been doing that for a few years. Of course, the New School would be one of our big competitors there, where I teach at the Frost School of Music in terms of getting students.
Yeah.
And my son working over there across on the other side of enemy lines.
Well, he can be gathering. He can be a double agent gathering information for you.
Yeah.
That's true. So, like, I wanted to bring that to you've been down to your teaching. You've been down at Frost for 12 years now.
12 years. I think I'm actually finishing my 13th year total. The first semester I was there, I was commuting part-time from New York. So it's
So this has worked out well for you, and you're like,
yeah, I really love it. It came as a surprise. I wasn't expecting it. I got a phone call one day, and next thing I knew, I was in Miami. So kind of worked out. It took maybe a year and a half from the time of the phone call. And then I was supposed to be on the short list of candidates for the job, and I started doing the job, and they just canceled search and everything. So they wanted me and stuff. So I've been doing it, and I've taught guitar my whole life. Of course, every level of guitar, and musicians need to, as that's part of being able to, especially as a jazz musician, as part of being able to survive. That supplement, that way to supplement your income teaching. Can't say I was a fan of teaching beginning guitar, for years, but I had to do it. And I looked at it also as a way. I started teaching a lot more when I started doing less commercial gigs, kind of got out of the whole wedding band scene and started teaching. And I thought this teaching is completely separate from what I do as a performer. Not necessarily as an artist, though. I think as an artist, everything you do is part of being an artist. Whether you're teaching a 6-year-old kid, it all kind of comes under the same umbrella, and you can learn so much. I think that kind of really difficult teaching that I did has probably made me a better college professor. And then I taught a little bit in New York, just on a kind of part-time basis at SUNY Purchase some and NYU, but never really anything like that. And then I got to Miami. Frost is one of the lead programs in the country, and level of students is very high, and the level of what I'm teaching is really pretty high. Even getting into by the freshmen and sophomores that come in. I'm already getting pretty advanced to jazz harmony with them, and they're all playing great, and I love it. It's been an amazing job for me. I like it more than I ever thought. And I kind of, I got the call, and I kind of said yes immediately. A couple of people have asked me about that. It's like, really, you wanted to leave New York? It's like, I was in New York for 30 years. I mean, at some point, there's nothing you haven't seen.
this is true.
There's not one gig that you haven't done, in the New York jazz scene or touring or whatever. And it's like, no, it's time. Plus, I grew up in Florida, in Sarasota, Florida. And so that made it a little bit easier moving back to Florida, like the weather and stuff. But the job is a great creative outlet for me, which I didn't know I would say that before I actually experienced what it is. It's really been a creative outlet. Whatever I'm working on myself goes right into my school, goes right into my teaching, and stuff. And I'm sure you've experienced some of the same things in your.
Oh yeah,
you're teaching too. You're teaching too, and you just become I'm keeping my chops together, but you start analyzing things on that degree. And it's like, wow, I'm teaching myself so much. Like, there's certain things that I've taught, like even the way I would teach giant steps now is completely different than it would have 20 years ago from what I've kind of learned. Just in,
Go ahead and elaborate. I think there's a fair amount of students that are checking this out. Like, how are you teaching it differently?
Well, the first thing, I wasn't really hip to the 9-note augmented scale, which is the third mode of Messiaen's scales of limited transposition. I didn't even know what that was, but I played those sounds my whole career.
Yeah.
And I actually heard Andy Laverne was down, and I've known Andy Laverne for years, and Andy Laverne and Bergonzi were down actually, but they were at FIU. They were at another school I went over, and somebody asked them about symmetrical scales, and Laverne said, "Well, the diminished scale is part of Messiaen's modes of limited transposition." I'm like, "What? What's that?" And then Bergonzi said, "There's a 6-note augmented scale and there's a 9-note augmented scale," but he didn't elaborate on that. So. Then I realized the Messiaen modes, the first mode is a whole tone scale. The second mode is a diminished scale. And the third mode is the 9-note augmented scale. And then there's 7 of them. I guess mathematically, it's the only 7 scales you can find that don't transpose 12 times, hence the limited transposition. So they repeat. The other 4 I haven't looked at as much, but they all repeat only twice. They're divided by the tritone. They're not tetrachords, but they're like things on both sides of the triad that only repeats. But the first three we use as jazz musicians, we use all over the place and stuff. So I got that. And so Giant Steps, which I probably first played in high school, and I used to teach it, and then I knew, okay, you can play the Giant Steps with one augmented scale and all this. And I look at the melody, but the melody's not augmented. It's got these three different notes that are outside of a B augmented scale. It's got an A, it's got an F, and it's got a C sharp. And it just so happens those three notes are in the other three notes that make the 9-note, the Messiaen scale. And then I realized Giant Steps is completely composed of those 9 notes of that scale. Melody notes and the roots of the chords. The roots of the 9 chords in Giant Steps and the 9 melody notes are all in Messiaen's third mode of limited transposition. Very interesting. And that's not discussed amongst colleagues that much either. Although some of my colleagues, I had some colleagues that are, Gary Keller recently retired, the sax teacher, you must know, and he's very into some very heady theory, but he wasn't really, that stuff is a little bit more on the periphery, I think. People know it. And then I realize we'll talk about Giant Steps being the bridge of Have You Met Miss Jones is the same chord progression. Really what happens at the beginning of the first half of Giant Steps, you got 3 keys and they modulate down a major third or up a sharp 5, so that's what's happening. And then the second half of Giant Steps, everything's up a major third, the much easier modulation. B to E flat to G, G to B, and then B back to E flat. And so the first one's the harder one, of course, and Heavy Miss Jones does that exactly, but the chords are all spread out. And then, so for years I thought, yeah, if Richard Rodgers just heard this really pretty melody and chord progression and wrote this, and Coltrane wrote that, it was a variation of that and stuff. And then now it's like Richard Rodgers used that theory of Messiaen's scale to write the bridge of Have You Met Miss Jones.
Do you know this?
No, I don't know it, but I'm almost gonna make a hypothesis 100% that he did.
Wow.
Because it follows it. So the whole thing comes from dividing the octave into 3 equal parts, right? So you get 3 major thirds. That's where augmented harmony comes from. So he's got the 3 key centers, a major third apart. But then the first melody note, the first melody note of each of those keys is the 3 extra notes that would make the 9-note scale, which is crazy. So if you look at the augmented, let's say Having Met Miss Jones, we'll say, okay, it's B flat, so we're going to look at a B flat augmented scale fitting over all that. Those first 3 melody notes make the other 3 notes, so you got the full 9-note scale from that. And then check this out. This I just figured out a couple weeks ago. It's an augmented pattern, the melody.
Oh, yeah.
If you play those first 3 notes, the first 3 notes of each key make up an augmented triad, but it repeats. If you just repeat that melody, it's symmetrical. That melody. So it's like an augmented pattern itself. So I'm like, damn, that would sound like he's probably looking at that. He didn't really use that in any other music either. Yeah. So it's like, let me experiment. But then the other thing I found, I heard this from, I haven't corroborated, but from talking to Whit Seidner, who was ran the program at Miami for 40 years. He's retired. He said that Richard Rodgers studied at Columbia with Schillinger, who started the Berklee School of Music, and Nicholas Slonimsky was there at the same time, and I think Jerome Kern was too. So they were all there. And Slonimsky that's really like the king of dividing the octave. I think everything that Slonimsky looked at. And the exact last melody in Giant Steps is a pattern in Slonimsky also, with which one am I? Colleagues did me too. That's right. It's on page 58 or something. I don't know. So there you go. Then you go back. It's very trendy now. I don't know if you've heard this. They look at Ravel's Gaspard de Nuit, the piano piece. And there's a section called Ondine, and it goes through it sounds like giant steps. And,
I'll have to check that out.
yeah. People have been putting that on Facebook, and they're superimpose the giant steps melody. But essentially, Ravel he goes through 3 minor keys, major third part. And then the melody in that one section goes down a whole tone scale, which is also and then there's another thing that sounds a little like giant. And I was checking out the whole piece. I was in Aspen this summer teaching. I was going to do a lecture on this stuff, and I checked out the Ravel piece from the beginning, and it just starts out. He starts playing an augmented triad, and that's it. This augmented triad is happening throughout, and then he arrives at that having 3 minor keys of major third away from the augmented triad. So my thing, and what I tell my students, I said I taught giant steps many different ways. Now I teach you what is giant steps: equal division of the octave in 3 parts. Period. And it is all the theory, what it is, and all the Coltrane changes and stuff. It's all that. Yeah, you got to divide the octave in 3 parts, and then you're gonna get all those sounds. Everything's from that. So that's Jay.
In 7 years of liner notes, that's the most intense theory lesson that we've had, man. So thanks for that. That's really cool, man.
Thanks. I'm having fun with it. I'm teaching advanced improv and at Miami now. I've been doing it for about the last 5-6 years, and I'm doing all that. I have 2 days on really kind of intense augmented theory and stuff. It's funny because I've been playing the sounds. I go back to listen to some of my composition from years ago. I was playing the sounds. I think in it's pretty relevant. I think in what people do. Particularly like Mark Turner and Meldau and Kurt Rosenwinkel. They have their kind of language with it. But then going in the 70s, certainly Liebman, Richie Byrack, and Brecker, and all those people were playing those sounds. Coltrane did it a different way, but it's fun. I was listening to some of Coltrane's last records, and he's still moving through major thirds. Even though he's improvising freely, he didn't really play those tunes. Giant steps. There is a recording that was up on, I think, one of Frank Tiberi's recordings that got a Coltrane that got leaked on Facebook a while back. I don't know if you heard that of Train. I know you're over giant steps. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Slower tempo, and he's playing really melodically and just phrasing like it's crazy. But he really didn't play those tunes. But on Interstellar Space, you'll hear like blah boo-ya, boo-dee-da, boo-ya. You'll hear him playing melodies like that. And there's free improvisation. So he's still looking at that along with all the other things. So he was very interested in that. I would go as far to say as maybe Beethoven was the first giant steps, because Beethoven modulated the flat 6 in the Ode to Joy right before the Turkish march. It's like, and D is like ba ba, and then B flat ba, and then ba. It's like what was Beethoven the first giant. That's 2/3 of giant steps there.
Wow. Okay. There you have it, man.
So it's all coming, that harmony's all coming from, Mahler's Ninth Symphony's been one of my favorite pieces, and there's this huge, 9-note augmented chord right in the beginning of it, 1908. Or you could analyze it as other things too, but you could also analyze it as a 9-note augmented chord, So it's, theory's been around, that theory's been around for a long time. You look at composers thinking about what you can do by dividing up the octave.
John, thank you for your time, man. Again, the record is Love Is on SteepleChase, and new trio record being recorded in February. You'll probably see that next year, and you're going to be at Birdland with your trio. What's the date again?
Birdland, February 16th, and we have a few other gigs in New York. We're playing at a club upstate called, maybe since we're on this, it'd be good to advertise this. I gotta open something. I believe we're playing at the Jazz Forum too. Mark Moriarty's a great club, which I haven't played at. And we played at Maureen's last time we were in New York. It's another great club. Let me see, I got Juke's thing here. Yeah, we have, we're playing a gig also in New York at Piano in the Park. That's on April 10th. Jazz Forum, Tarrytown, New York, April 6th.
Well, John, good to see you, man. Record sounds really cool. And
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's really fun. So.
Excellent. Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Van Doren Reeds and Mouthpieces. Be sure and check out the Van Doren Advisory Studio in New York City for all your sound sculpting needs. Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Arlen's Good Beer in Bowling Green, Ohio.
Engineered by Marco Mendoza. Visit his website at engineeredbymarco.com. The theme music is Hide, Seek, Find from my record Beatitude, out on Tiger Turn.
Produced by David Bixler. Be sure and subscribe to Liner Notes wherever you find your podcasts. If you like what you hear, I ask that you consider supporting Liner Notes financially. You can do this by going to the Liner Notes tab at davidbixler.com. Thank you for your consideration.